Hello, welcome to the December meeting for the Bugzilla Project. We are live from Orlando, Florida at Disney World Dolphin Resort. And with me here, I have Dylan Hartson. And go ahead.
Yeah.
Hi, take it away.
All right, so I will talk about the proverbial elephant in the room, which is the fact that we haven't got a release out and it's near the end of the year. The reason for that is not very technical as much as it is time. So basically what we need is we need to be able to get an installable state for other people. But what we've actually been doing is continuing to make improvements to BMO. And the biggest improvement that I'm kind of excited to announce is that our edit comments extension, which we've had for a while, has been extended by Kohei over here to be a generic comment, self-comment editing thing. So when you make a comment, you can edit it. We're gating this. It's configurable and gated by a group, but we are intend to eventually, on BMO, set this to the edit bugs group so that if you are a member of edit bugs and you make a comment with a typo in it or whatever, you can edit that comment. This is also known in Bugzilla land as Bug 540, which is, I think, the oldest open bug related to Bugzilla itself. So that's interesting. I think we can talk a little bit about some of the trade-offs we made. I'll actually do that in the form of questions to Kohei about maybe why we did that, and that will preempt that. And then we will talk about what concrete things we need done to do a release. These are things that we definitely know that we need to do. But I've mentioned them here because if anyone's really screaming to want to use the BMO code, they could help by just, running the code, seeing where it fails, and submitting patches for that. Because it does run for us like every day. Like we do a release of BMO weekly, pretty much, sometimes multiple times a week. So we know the code works and runs, but configuration across different operating systems and versions of Perl and so on can be complicated. But let's talk about the edit comments. So one of the reasons that comments was never implemented in the past is we had discussions that kind of went nowhere. Like if you edit a comment, should an email notification be sent? And other things such as should you be able to edit your own comment after it's been there for a while, and so on. And the answer to these questions, what we did is we have Kohei's in a kind of a designer role, and what we do is we have him do what he does on his own actually, and helps and volunteers to us, is he does user research, and we basically delegate the decisions on if these are a good idea to him, because that's how you can actually make decisions and move forward. So for instance, for why we're not sending out emails, and that's because what's the reason for not sending emails when you edit a comment, like the biggest reason?
So yeah, basically we have seen the edit comments on GitHub or Facebook or whatever, and actually, I'm using GitHub every day, almost every day.
And they don't send out emails when you edit.
They don't.
So what you're saying is the reason you come to this decision is it seems to be the best practice in the industry to have a feature like this, and it doesn't send out a notification on every edit.
Maybe
that's too strong a term, best practice, but yeah, because it's not. It seems unusual, and it would also be annoying. And in our case, specifically in the BMO case, we send out a fantastically large amount of email, and I think sending out more for fixing typos would just cause annoyance. So there's that feature, and then the other feature that we had, which I think is important to highlight, is why. This leads into another thing. So why you can edit any comment that you have made yourself for no bounded amount of time, and that is because it's impossible to really rate. Like, it's impossible to decide what would be an appropriate time, because people could want to edit it for numerous reasons. Like you could, for instance, accidentally paste your own address, I guess, into a comment and not realize it for months, and then you want to fix it. So you could then go and ask an admin to please do that. And in that case, I'll actually get to this. You actually should do that because we preserve the edit history of every comment.
Mm-hmm.
But what an admin is able to do is hide edits. Yep. So in the case that you are removing sensitive information, you still need to talk to an admin to have it removed.
Yep.
But it fits the model of what people expect as far as comment editing. So I won't talk about it anymore because that's just like one feature. But I think since it's bug 540 and it was controversial enough that there are so many comments on that bug that it deserved a little bit of extra call out.
Yep. It's 20 years old bug.
It's as old as Bugzilla itself, pretty much.
Yes. Good one. Thanks.
The other side, the other big controversial change. So for all of the new code that we've been adding to Bugzilla, which is the Modulicious code, which let's revisit the Modulicious. So we've been running Modulicious for months now. There have been no major issues. Some of the issues that we've had that are minor is that the Modulicious icon was showing up on certain pages, and that's been fixed. And we still have some people that don't like the 404 page, which is the default Modulicious one, which shows a raptor unicorn. However, there's like 50% of people don't like that, but another 50% of people really like the default logo. So I don't know that it will change that. But those are some of the only issues we've had with Modulicious. It's just been pretty rock steady. And it leads me to a thing that we will be turning on pretty soon, which is the simplest of things. But the index.cgi page will be the first thing that is migrated to no longer be a CGI. So I have, for the last month, there's been /home on Bugzilla, which is a completely normal Modulicious route that renders the same content as the index.cgi does. And over a long period of time, I've been able to benchmark it, and it is consistently exactly twice as fast as the index.cgi. So I can conclusively say that if you are running the Modulicious code, which is in the Harmony branch right now, you will get at least twice as good performance, at least for the index page. I don't know. I think that there will be bigger improvements for the more complicated things as we migrate them, but I don't have any concrete plan to migrate them at the moment. It will happen when we need it. Like for the index page, I didn't need to do it. It's just a proof of concept. But
do you know why it's a performance difference?
I think that it just comes down to that we're not running. So for the CGI, we have to buffer the output to a file, or buffer the input to a file, parse it again. So Modulicious has already parsed the HTTP request, and then we have to turn that into a HTTP payload to the CGI faked environment, and then that has to parse it again. So it makes sense. It's
just because you're using native Mozilla wrapper to get the content out.
And if you think about it from
the CGI module in Perl.
Yeah, and if you think about the low-level stuff, it's going to be doing fewer memory allocations and just fewer things all around.
Mm-hmm.
The code is also much nicer. So I'll talk related to this. We have begun using features of Modulicious in the current release of BMO. We have let me get this right, OAuth 2 support. Mm-hmm. And that OAuth 2 support is making use of Modulicious features such as the OAuth 2 plugin that was written by Lee Johnson, but also simple built-in Modulicious like the session store. We actually have a session that you can store things in that's not tied to a user account. This seems unremarkable using a modern framework, but Bugzilla didn't have its own in-house session management code. So what a session is, if you're not familiar, is it's basically you get a hash that's per user, or per not logged in user even, that you put stuff in and it persists. And we're using that to remember what page you were visiting when you go to log in to OAuth. The OAuth stuff isn't used for anything yet, there's no API really that uses OAuth, but except for Profile API, but we did it to integrate to Mozilla's single sign-on system. So
it's just used for authentication right now.
Yeah, and to be sure, it's an OAuth provider, so Bugzilla can be a Harmony, BMO, Bugzilla 6 can act as an OAuth 2 provider. We think we might have to as a consumer in the future, but that will require unraveling the auth code, and don't want to do that at the moment. But so that's one of the benefits we've gained from Modulicious, and let's see. Oh yeah, the final thing. So there's all this new code, which is how I originally started talking about this, and all of the new code I styled according to the Modulicious coding conventions, and as a result, it's very consistent, self-consistent, and finally, at the urgings of longtime, although lapsed, current contributors, Byron Jones, Glob, and my co-Bugzilla.mozilla.org developer, David Lawrence, who is not here, unfortunately, we made the call to reformat all of BMO's code using the same conventions that Modulicious uses. This resulted in a 80,000 line or 80,000 lines changed patch, which is kind of large. And we attributed it to a single fictitious person so that no one takes the credit for the changes. But as a result, all of the code is now very consistent. And to make Harmony compatible with this, I have also reformatted the Harmony fork. I've done diffs between the two, and actually keeping merges between the two will be easier now because of the automated reformatting. I intend to do a separate branch for the 5.0 Bugzilla release and the master branch of Bugzilla. They're also formatted this way to facilitate the necessary work of pulling things from the 5.0 release and the master branch into Bugzilla 6. But no longer, so as far as contributing to Bugzilla, if you're worried about ever contributing, you no longer have to worry about code formatting. If your code's not formatted the right way, we'll just reformat it with Perl tidy, and we effectively don't care as long as it's been formatted before being committed. So I think that's pretty modern and conventional in other projects, so shouldn't be too controversial. That's all I have. I guess the real thing I need to talk about is blockers. I mentioned that I was going to try to get a Bugzilla release out, a Bugzilla Harmony release out, and I completely failed at doing that. Here's the real steps I think we need to take. Is we need to, and I say we, it could be us, but my time is limited. Kohei's time is limited. We mostly focus on making BMO better, and doing these releases takes a lot of time. But what we could do is stand up a Bugzilla install, running on whatever is the most common thing we could run it on, and work through all of the installation setup issues, and then write those down. I will say now that if you were dedicated and you wanted to get the same code as BMO running, it would only take a somewhat skilled person like a day. So not that bad, but I know there are paper cuts that we could work on. But we would need to make a decision on what platform to target. In the past, I've tried getting Bugzilla running on Heroku, which is possible, but due to the file system stuff, the fact that we still write the data params file to the file system, it doesn't work there very well because you can't change any settings. So open to suggestions. I also have Bugzilla running Kubernetes, but me running that, I had it running for a solid month, and I ended up having like a $55 bill, and I'm not interested in doing that long term. So anything I stand up will need to be cheaper. So Dave, what do you think? So to make a release quality candidate, what should our acceptance criteria be? I mean, we should just have an arbitrary acceptance criteria for this is the beta release of Bugzilla 6.
Yeah,
Like,
do we have all the major features that happened in master that didn't on the BMO fork get ported in yet?
not all of them. We're still, so a thing we're currently working on is usernames. We're re-implementing that.
That's
Yeah, I remember that was one of the big ones.
Yeah, and that's very important. So maybe we block on the usernames thing, because so BMO wants that too. So maybe what we're saying is that as much as we want to get the code out, we want it to also work, and we want it to not have problems like usernames not being a thing. Email addresses should never be public in the modern world. So I guess we can put that as a block, an acceptance criteria.
We want to be able to upgrade it from current 5.0 releases.
Yeah, current 5.0, I'm not sure we can upgrade it from master because of the schema changes, but 5.0 should actually already work. There's something with the mail staging table I got to look at, because BMO does not use the mail staging table, so that might be a thing too. Email code in general is different between the two, and it's a large area of divergence. So okay, so I'm going to categorize this. There are features that, and Emma has just joined us. So Emma, we've been having a meeting. You can pull up a chair and sit over here if you like. And so behind us is approaching is. You can. We're just going to all scooch in here. So Emma, what I talked about some of the new features we've done in BMO, and what I'm actually talking about now is with just Dave here is acceptance criteria for actually. Yeah, it's good where it is.
You move it back.
You move it.
Put it back where it was.
Yeah.
It was fine where it was. You moved it too far.
You can move it.
That's fine.
You can move it closer.
There you go, right there.
Yeah. There we go.
So sorry for that interruption, but hey, this is way more people than we usually have in a meeting. So what I'm talking about is acceptance criteria. Before like a month or two ago, I think 2 months ago, because I missed the last meeting, I had made a promise to try to get a releasable version of Harmony, the Bugzilla, BMO as a product, and I completely failed at doing that. So I'm talking about now about the acceptance criteria, like what we actually need to do this. And so Just Davis mentioned that we need there's the username support landed in upstream, but we need to backport that. Conveniently, that's the thing that BMO cares about too. So that is something I can probably work on. But there's other acceptance criteria involving the fact that the email sending code in BMO is different than the upstream master. So that's a piece, and I mentioned this because that's a piece that I could use help. I don't expect to actually get help, but if anyone wanted to help, that would be a piece that I could use help with is porting those changes over, because there's no value for BMO using the email code that's in the upstream master. So if it is technically better in some ways, but that would be something that if there was something, if someone came up to me and said, Dylan, I would love to help, what could I do? I could write a very detailed plan of how to do that. I just don't have the time. But aside from those two things, I don't see any other acceptance criteria other than it needs to be installable and runnable in some kind of reasonable way. Like, I don't want to support all targets on all platforms, obviously, but there should be a suggested configuration that it would be easy to install on.
So if we made a decision to say that Bugzilla runs in a container,
For instance, yes,
would that be a way to say we will support
this container.
we'll support Kubernetes, we'll support Docker? Or...
Yeah, no. So actually, no. All we have to say is a container. So the container, as it is now, what I ship to our operations team is a container. So if I say that the Bugzilla 6 release is this container that you build by running Docker build in the source directory, I could support that. That is I've not thought of before, but I could support that because that's repeatable. That actually solves all the deployment problems. And I know from experience that same container that we build currently does run in Kubernetes, and it runs in a regular Docker Compose environment. I think it probably would run as a Docker Swarm, but I don't think anyone uses that. Kubernetes is pretty much what people like. But what you could do with that actually as a release product is there's a package manager for Kubernetes called Helm. It's not actually a package manager, but that's the closest analog. So what we could say as a release criteria is you can Helm install Bugzilla and get something that works. So I think actually, Just Dave, you're the project lead. So if we say that as a beta that you can Helm install Bugzilla, do you think that could be a release beta that we could work towards?
Yeah, it's just a beta. Yeah, there's a lot of smaller organizations that use Bugzilla too, not just enterprise folks.
Yep.
So there's to some degree, it would probably be useful to still be able to run it standalone on a small server.
And you still
having fancy tools with it.
And you still can. It's just I'm trying to think of how to get the code to people that might want to run it, and now at like early adopters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's pretty reasonable.
But I thought one of the purposes of containerization was to make it possible for small organizations to run it, and
it depends on it does. I think what he means is there's organizations that aren't there yet. They need to get there, but what we can do, I think, is we can provide the source code. If we provide in the source code, it's just like if you had an open source. Imagine this is in a compiled language. We have the source code, which is open source, and it does run on a normal Linux. I mean, a Docker is a normal Linux machine, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But what we give as a build artifact, the compiled executable, is the Docker container. And I think if we view it that way, it maps pretty well to compiled software.
Right. We're not going to support all compiled targets, but what we will do is give you the source.
Yeah, and as an early beta, I think it's reasonable to say we're only going to prepare this Docker image. But another deliverable target, I think, would be, rather than installation instructions, would be like an RPM. So like the people he's talking about would be served by an RPM. I don't have any experience writing those. But if someone wanted, if someone wanted to create an RPM that would install Bugzilla, it's really easy to do. So if you're targeting CentOS 7, the current Bugzilla service file, the bugzilla.pl, can run as a service. As a systemd unit. Pretty easy. Like there's it's much harder to do sysv init with it. Like the sysv init in the Docker, in the Vagrant that we develop on, doesn't work well because sysv is hard to do. I mean,
what I was getting at is that a lot of smaller companies don't really have an IT person. They got somebody that knows a little bit about computers that set up
They would be served by
server or something.
I think they'd be served by an RPM.
And a lot of those kind of guys have no idea what a container is.
Yeah.
Well, do we know, I guess the question there is, what do we know how many of these are out there?
Yeah, we can do that. We could get, if we sometimes get feedback from these videos. So what we could say is like, for beta, we're targeting our Docker container.
Mhm.
How interested would you be in subsequently there being an RPM? I'm making no promise of making an RPM. I don't have the time and I don't know the knowledge, but I can do a container. That's actually pretty easy.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's a question, open question. If anyone wants to provide feedback to this video. Isaman says, in the IRC stuff, I'll work on the email stuff tomorrow. Oh my God, that is better news. So Emmanuel, if you're listening to this, I just literally, if you look back in the video and you see my face smile, it is complete genuine happiness. I just noticed that. So yeah, I will let me know when you're doing that. I will write as detailed instructions as I write to my coworkers when I'm doing stuff on BMO itself, which if you ask any of them, I think Kohei hasn't received as much because he's mostly self-motivated, but my other coworkers can attest that I write very detailed instructions when I have a vague idea, and they're very good. So just let me know what you need.
Okay.
So that's very exciting. So yeah, that's what we're gonna do. So what I'm gonna do now is so just say there's questions about like the Mojo stuff that people probably have. Kohei might have questions about what my priorities are. So if either of you want to ask me questions, that's good. And if not, I have questions I can ask Kohei about priorities as well. So you want to do that? Do you want to be asked questions or asking questions?
Whatever.
I don't have anything to ask right now, really, I guess.
Okay. Okay. So Kohei, what is the importance level of doing the server sent events? Like how close are we to needing that for the notifications? So server sent events is a thing that we get in Mojilicious where we can have the web page that receives a message from the server when an event happens to do notifications. Like that's like really, you need that, not, I won't say urgent, but like it's very important.
Yeah, it can be, not Bugzilla 6, but Bugzilla 7. We can,
So
implement a real-time thread update.
So you're saying that's not a top priority at the moment. It's like a P2. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
P2 is fine.
Okay, API wise, so I think the thing that I'm going to try to tackle this week is this actually doesn't affect most users in Bugzilla, but we are seeing that the REST products API is very slow. So that will need to be fast. Is there anything like if we release this as what we have now as a Bugzilla 6, is there anything that you feel is missing?
Markdown support maybe?
Markdown. Okay, that's being worked on. That's probably going to land.
Because it's a common request.
Yep.
Everyone wants it.
By the way, for those that are following, so the Markdown support we're doing is we're using the C library that's provided by GitHub, so it's identical to their Markdown. But I've left the code open so that if someone wanted to use a pure Perl implementation and not have a dependency on a compiler, I haven't written the code for this, but you could go in and pretty easily add in a different Markdown renderer that didn't have any C dependencies. So it's pluggable, the current design that my coworker is implementing. So, and if you don't have it installed, then you will get the current existing rendering support that Bugzilla has, which is not Markdown. It's just like plain text. So that your Markdown, because Markdown is like the #1 thing.
Yeah.
So if you have Markdown and you release it, you would be pretty happy with it as a product. Okay.
That's good.
Emma, do you have anything?
Well, the question that I have on the Markdown support, and I'm excited, definitely excited for it, is one thing that comes up from the BMO community is the ability to @ mention or plus mention.
That's something Kohei is interested in.
Yes, and with Markdown you get part of that, but really the ability to need info someone. And again, need info is
An extension.
Is an extension, but I don't know how widely it is used outside of Mozilla.
It's pretty. I haven't checked that. I did a code review of the Red Hat Bugzilla code base somewhat recently. They're a private branch of it for security issues. I'm pretty sure they're using need info. I'm not going to answer for certain because I'm not sure if I should. But so the other giant
A lot of other places had need info before Mozilla did.
Okay.
And so, as for the Harmony project, all of the extensions with some minor exceptions that we ship in BMO are considered core features of the Harmony Bugzilla 6
Okay.
initiative.
So in that case, I think the ability to at mention or plus mention, that is at mention being the GitHub syntax and the plus mention being more like being more the Google syntax, and there's the at mention, which is the
Mastodon one?
Mastodon, yeah.
And then there's
Mastodon
did you know $ matches on Twitter, by the way? $ is will tag a person's name.
I thought that was just for stock tickers.
Oh, maybe, I don't know. It's like, it starts turning into a link. It's real weird.
Yeah, $sign. Yeah, $sign.
So we have the API. We have the API for doing a user lookup, and the user lookup is even fast. So that part does work. It would be Kohei's. That's all on the front end.
Or we could use colons, since we do have that convention from BMO.
Yeah, the colons.
Yeah. So we, as usually as usually the Mozilla way is that we have many different ways of solving the same problem.
Yeah.
And we embrace them all.
Yes. I realize I keep looking at the screen rather than the camera, which is probably slightly off-putting, but oh well. I'm not used to being on a camera. I mean, other than the one on my desk when we do this, I'm in my room and everything. But anyway, so yeah, okay, so Emma, you were saying, and you're a valuable stakeholder, that you think a Bugzilla 6 that has the need info support tagged in would be very useful. Let's talk a little bit, because we're talking about doing a release, and we assume that some people that are interested in the release are watching that, but I don't have an idea of what those people are like. So let's talk about what we think our user is, like a person that's going to actually take this and install it, if we can. Like, obviously, I make these changes to benefit the Mozilla community for their Bugzilla, but Just Dave, I think, has some insight to people that would like, as maybe a single person IT shop, like literally you're an IT department and you need to track things and it needs to be private. I'm assuming those are all the user story that we're talking about. Just Dave, would you want to speak to that? Like, what do you picture our hypothetical typical user is that still wants to use us, and from there you can start from the fact that we assume that they want a private install, because if they were in the public, there's lots of other solutions they could use, but Bugzilla itself is good at being private. So what do you imagine what our typical user looks like? Like, what do they want to achieve?
Bug tracking.
Well, is it bug tracking or is it task tracking? Because this is a thing that's come up now.
Some of each.
It's defect tracking is what we say on the tin and on the Wikipedia article. I think the defect tracking is where we're strongest.
I've seen people that use it for to-do lists and stuff too.
Yes.
So.
To a degree, a defect tracking system is a to-do list, because obviously you're going to track a defect because you expect to eventually be able to fix it.
Yeah.
So
Right. But a defect as opposed to a to-do item has different criteria.
yeah. So Emma, what do you think about defects, specifically about defects?
So what I think about a defect, okay, well, what makes a defect done? A defect done is that you ended up in a state where you make a decision that you're not going to fix it. So that is an incomplete or won't fix, an invalid bug. And it could be a bug that is also tracked elsewhere. We're saying, okay, we move this to a GitHub or to another track. There is a case where a defect is resolved. So in that case, there's a pull request or change set that has been reviewed and approved and landed and possibly verified.
So you haven't spoken too much of what this user looks like, but I want to touch on the issue, the code tracking part. I think that the way that this looks in the future is that the attachments concept evolves into being links to code. Like, attachments right now has been patches, and I think extending that idea, as we've done in BMO, where you attach pull requests or you attach fabricated revisions in the case of Mozilla. But basically, there are many different code management solutions, and the attachment doesn't really always mean I'm sending you a screenshot. It sometimes means I'm relating this to where the work is being done.
Right. So attachment is really not. Yeah. So I think there's we're looking now on an abstraction of attachment has a place
or a split. Maybe there's attachments and then there's code links, or that's a bad name.
Links to, so there's links to GitHub, which is a repository which has its own machinery, and there you could be links to multiple systems. So if you land code in Mozilla Central, you're landing code in a Mercurial repository, but the reviews are being handled by Fabricator.
In the Mozilla case, that is exactly what we're doing. So
is that a module? Does that in a future Bugzilla release become a separate module where there's sort of a basic one that says, here's how you would do that, like with Splinter?
I think what you mean is if it's like a plugin. What I think it is,
Yeah.
I don't like the plugin architecture. I think that ends up with brittle software
Mm-hmm.
to some degree. We do have extensions. I don't plan on deprecating, but I think what we do is we'd support the common cases for that. But let's talk about that user. I actually have some insight in this, I think. And here's what I think our user looks like. And if I'm wrong about this, people that watch this in the future, please tell me how I'm wrong. I love hearing how I'm wrong on the internet. But so I think that in a lot of small shops, if they're open source friendly, what they'll probably do is they'll probably get started on GitHub. They'll probably use GitHub and they'll use issues. And for most things that they'll be fine. But what's going to happen in this use case that someone's actually picking up Bugzilla, and I'm not going to talk too much about our existing user base. I want to make sure we treat them well and handle them, but I want to handle all of the cases and understand our users. And model them in my head. So what I think they'll do is you start out and you're using issues and something happens. Either you want more privacy, where you want your issues to be private, but your code is still public, but your issues are private because of office politics or just security reasons, things like that. So that's one case. So you need privacy of what your defects actually are. Maybe they're valuable. The other use case, they've actually grown too complicated for the tagging that's possible with like a GitHub issue, for instance.
Right.
So you've grown
to
too
GitHub issue can be either closed or open, and then you have a tagging vocabulary. There's a basic vocabulary, and you can extend the tagging vocabulary. But then the other thing comes into is also the complexity.
Yeah,
because GitHub repositories are very flat.
Yeah.
And if you look at a system like Bugzilla and the Mozilla projects, we have
complexity baked in, components.
We have multiple browsers across multiple platforms. We have a separation between the browser Chrome and the core rendering engine.
Right.
And that then allows you to say that you need this ability to manage these hierarchies. You also don't really have a notion of blocking.
Yep.
You don't have a regression.
So what you're saying
is, and I just want to bookmark that, is getting the regress by and regresses fields would be another thing that would be good to get in.
Yeah, I would love to get that.
Because then we can remove that complexity that we have right now where we overload
the depends and
blocks operators.
Yeah, so Emmanuel in the interest has talked to, he's one of our community members I've met in person many times, Isaman in the channel, has talked about how he would love to extend the see also field in the future for cross-internet, cross-bug tracking, relationship management, and that's something I want to touch on in the future. But when we talk about our user, right, we're trying to draw a picture. So you touched on it with the complexity, and you gave the details of what some of that complexity would be, and that's exactly it. So like when the one-dimensionality, it's like 1.2, no, it's like 2.5 dimensions of complexity you have on issues, because you have the raw feed of issues, they're open and closed, and then there's tagging that can mean whatever you want it to mean. So if you have complex needs that are bigger than that, then Bugzilla is a good use case for you. And you also, independently of that use case, touch on another one where you might have multiple repos that are multiple repos for reasons of management or reasons of complexity of the code. So you keep lots of small, like maybe you're doing microservices and each service is its own repo. And you want to track things across that, like you're doing a thing that's a lot of tiny components and you want to track issues in all of them, then I think that maybe that Bugzilla would be a good use case. So I want to kind of stop here, but these are the kind of use cases that we want to, that I'm willing to spend time on, and that I think that these are real people that exist that fit this template, and if they don't, I'm sure I'll hear about it. And I'm sure there's other use cases. There are other use cases of I think there are use cases of defect tracking that don't even involve software development that that might be being used, that Bugzilla might be being used for. Because defects can be lots of things, like possibly defects can be repairs that need to be done for chains of apartments. I actually hear that there's someone using Bugzilla for that purpose. So I would like to touch on their needs as well. Actually, I'll touch on that. So then their code is open source, and we've had conversations in public class, so I'll talk about that. One of the things they're interested in, these people, I only know Kai Hendry, who's come in the IRC channel a bit, has an issue with, I can't characterize this exactly, but they need better management of privacy between tenants of Bugzilla. So a tenant would be like a product, and they need the product to be isolated from all of the products. So users that can see this product are completely isolated. Bugzilla has a strict isolation option, and I think that in the core product, maybe after the 6.0 release, like in 7, we work on making the use case of you're managing separate products that are completely separate and are not public. That use case might be valuable to some people. Do you think that that's we've kind of hashed out? I feel that there's a template. I don't feel that this is maybe a huge number of people, but I feel that these templates, they're not user stories, but they're like a precursor to that. Give me, at least talking about it, I feel that these are real and not imaginary people in my head. So do you agree by that? Or do you think we're missing out on anyone? Kohei or Emma or Dave? Pretty good? Okay. I realize this is very hard, and it's not like we actually prepared for this at all, but I want to make sure we are putting the users first, and in lack of feedback, we have to, do a little bit of creative thinking to get where we need.
All right. If possible, we could conduct some user surveys.
Yep. We could do that.
For Baxter 7.
Yeah, for 7. Yeah, we're not making. We're just, our promise for 6 is we're going to get the what's on BMO plus things we're working on currently for BMO out so that people can use it. Because I do know from our own Mozilla employees, some of our Mozilla employees participate in open source and they participate in other Bugzillas, and I've heard from more than one person that when they go to use the bugs.webkit, that it's not as fun. Like they go to use that and they're like, wait, this isn't Bugzilla. This is. And I also hope that we have some. We can have some. I don't know, interaction with KDE people like that in the future too, because in the past they had skinned their Bugzilla, and I thought it was a really pretty way, and they had lost that when they upgraded. So I would like to. I look forward to participating in the community with them some more in the future. I don't have anything else up there. I don't want to make this run too long. Like there's nothing else to really talk about. We are doing code. We are available. We've reformatted all of the code. Kohei here has fixed bug 540 effectively, at least in the next release. And Emma continues to give us actual, Emma for the BMO project gives us actual user feedback and use cases, and actually thinks intentionally about how we implement features. So these two, I don't think, Emma, I don't think you've been in a meeting before, but you've been mentioned.
No, so yeah, I guess.
But I want to tell you, you have been at least in service of BMO, you have been an invaluable member of the community. And the reason, there's two key reasons for why BMO is doing pretty good as far as not doing how you perceive it to be doing in the UX department is a combination of Kohei's work and Endless Vision, and I'm really happy that they're here with us.
Now, my role with respect to that on the release management team, the way I describe my job is basically it's policy, it's procedure, and it's analytics.
And a little bit of project management occasionally.
Yeah, project management and sort of a little bit of product management.
Yeah, that's why I actually meant product. Yeah, product management. Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah, a little bit of both. I do. I'm the utility infield, to use a sports ball metaphor.
I don't know sports, but I'll take your word for it. Anyway, I don't have anything else, so we can cut it out here. But thank you, and thank you for being here. Also, just Dave, thank you for organizing this. I didn't think about, hey, we're all going to be in the same place. We could have a meeting. That was all Dave, and it's been very good. So thank you. I feel confident about the this team is sitting next to me, like we're doing things.
Have you been following us on Twitter? Emma's been involved in some of our Twitter conversations too. So you're Triage Girl.
Yeah, I'm Triage Girl on Twitter. Feel free to @ me if you have questions, especially about how we use Bugzilla at Mozilla, but if you have other general questions.
Yeah, I don't know anyone. I personally don't know anyone that has thought more deeply about issue tracking and defect tracking. To be honest, like.
Well, probably over at GitHub or Log Creek.
Yeah, I don't know them. But, yeah, I really appreciate everyone. Not to be all too touchy-feely, but I feel that I don't often express that enough, and then when I have a chance to do it in public, that's pretty good. Okay, Jason, I don't know how we end this, but
Yeah, our